So the next statements we are going to see is called as the looping statement. Talking about the loops, right? So as we were already discussing, so when you have some statements that has some repeat things happening, right? So when you want to run some statements which are to be repeating itself, then you go for the looping statements. Okay. So there are two predominant looping statements. So one is called your while loop, and the other one is called as a for loop. Okay. We'll discuss about both these loops now. Just that a small syntax change is there, and of course conceptually also there is a small change. So I will let you know about that shortly. So before going into the syntax of the loop, so for example, let's say I want to print the numbers from 1 to 10. Okay, so in that case, generally without loops, it's tedious, right? So you will say print of 1, then print 2, so print 3, right? So without loops, if you assume the print, if I say just print the numbers from 1 to 10, then you will start writing like this and say print 10 and so on, correct? So if you look at this, the example here, you are repeating the print statement multiple times, correct? So you are repeating the print statements up to 10 times or something. So this should not happen. This is actually a redundancy here. So we need to avoid such redundancy. So this is where our loop is going to help us, right? So we can do this in both the types of loops. Then why there are two loops that are present? So because in some parts, for loops will be performing better. In some parts, while loop will be there, right? In some examples, you may not be able to use for loop at all as well. So we will be seeing all those things in the examples, right? So if you look at the loop statements, as I just told you, so printing up to 10 might take some time. But if I tell print from 1 to 1000, then how long you will be keeping on writing this? So that's where our loops come into the picture. And similarly, when I want to do some mathematical operations such as factorial and all, right? So I have this factorial. So what is 5 factorial? I mean, the operations is, you will say 5 factorial is going to be 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, correct? So there are going to be different multiplication operations that are it is there. So you need to multiply. So you are going to use this calculation called multiplication n minus 1 number of times. So if you want to use 5 factorial, then 4 times you are multiplying. If you are using 7 factorial, then it will be 7 into 6 into 5 and so on. So 6 times you want to use the multiplication. So when a particular operation is repeating itself multiple times, then you may have to go for the looping statements. Okay. So we will see the examples now one by one. First, we will take up the while loop, and then we will discuss about the for loop. Okay. So in while loop, what we have to say is, we have to first say what should be my starting point. From what should I start to print? So if I have to print, let's take this example. So print numbers from 1 to 10. So this is the example I'm taking here, right? So first is, I'm going to use this while loop. So in while loop, I'm going to say, I want to print the number from 1 to 10, right? So I have to define a variable called as the looping variable. Okay. So far we have been declaring lot of variables like A, B, C, number, year, and so on. But now here we need to declare a variable which is specifically going to be used within the loop, and that variable we call it as looping variable. Okay. So I'm going to say something like I equal to 1. So which means I'm saying I'm creating a variable called I and giving the value of 1 because I want the numbers to be printed from 1 to 10. Correct? So now if I say I equal to 1, and then I'm going to use this while loop. So the syntax is while condition, then statements. Okay, so statements to execute. This is the syntax, general syntax. Now what is the condition I want? I want the condition to be, the value should be not greater than 10. Okay, so till the number becomes equal to 10, you have to run the loop, correct? So from 1 onwards till 10, you have to keep on continuing the loop statements. So what we are going to do is, the condition is going to be while I is less than or equal to 10, because I'm starting the I. So this is called the looping variable, correct? So always make sure that you are using the looping variable within the loop. It can be while loop or for loop, but make sure whatever variable you declare for using in while loop should be used within that loop, correct? So I is the looping variable, so I have to use that I. Otherwise, there is no point in declaring this variable at all. So while I is less than or equal to 10, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say print I. Okay, but if I just say print I, now what will happen is if I just hit run now, it will go into an infinite loop because I less than or equal to 10. This I is 1. Okay, so this condition is always true, correct? So when I if I don't do anything else and then just hit run, this will lead to just it just keeps on printing one infinite number of times. So if you see here, the kernel is still running, it is still idle, which means I have gone into an infinite loop. So to stop this, I have to interrupt the kernel. And if you just scroll down, there are so many ones that are available in this output here. So don't do this one. So just to show you, I ran this. Now see, so I is 1. Okay, I is always 1. So, but I need to increment the value of I. Okay, so that should be there in the last line of the loop, right? So I have given I is equal to 1. I less than or equal to 10 is the condition within the while loop, and printing I. Okay. After I print the I should make the value of I to be okay. I will not use this syntax for now. I will use this I is equal to I plus 1. So what I'm doing, I'm incrementing the value of I to the next number. Initially I is 1, then I becomes 2, then I should become 3, and so on. So till I becomes 10, the loop will execute. Once I becomes 10, the condition becomes false here. So we will be coming out of the loop. Now when I run this, you can see that I becomes 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 10.
Sir, can we write I plus plus equal to here?
So
I
either
plus
you
plus.
use this syntax or you can use I plus equal to 1. This is also fine.
Okay.
If you are familiar with this syntax, please use it. Otherwise, just stick on with I is equal to I plus 1. What happens actually? I is 1. This condition now I is still 1. So the condition is true. Now it prints the first value, which is 1. I is already 1. So 1 plus 1 becomes 2. So it is getting looped here. Okay. That is what is a looping, right? So looping means it goes back to the first statement again. So till the condition holds true, the looping is going to take place. So if you consider this as your for or while loop, so when you are executing some statements, after the last statement in the loop, the concept is the control will get transferred back to the first line of the loop itself till the condition is true. Once the condition is false, this statement will come out of the loop. Okay, so this is called as the control flow. So there is a control happening here. I have some statements within the loop, and look at these two lines. Here I have both the lines are appearing in the same indent, which means both these lines are present within my while loop. If I take this I equal to I plus 1 outside the loop also, I will be not getting the proper result because I mean, once this loop gets over only, this statement will get executed. So that should not happen. So you should be aware of what statement should be present within the loop and what statement should be present outside the loop. So for all the statements to be present within the loop, it has to be on the same indent. There can be several lines here as well, just giving an idea. But all the lines that has to be taken care within the loop should always be present within the loop, right? Because all these statements are, I mean, these statements are going to repeat itself till the condition is right. So I'm just saying I is equal to I plus 1. There is alternate syntax to this, which is called as I plus equal to 1. So that syntax is, the meaning of this syntax is also the same. I plus equal to 1 means it is I equal to I plus 1. So this is also the same as this. Just assume that this is a shortcut way of writing this statement because I'm repeating I on left side as well as on the right side. To avoid that, I can use this syntax. Right? So till you become comfortable using this syntax, please avoid this and have only this syntax so that you are not making any mistakes here. Okay? Because by mistake, if you don't use plus or equal to, then you will land up in trouble. And it's not mandatory that you have to use only I plus equal to 1 kind of syntax. So no, right? I already showed you whether you use this syntax or this syntax, you will be getting the same output. There is no change in output at all. And here we are printing the numbers from 1 to 10. Right?
Sir, if we put I plus 2, will it print alternate numbers?
Correct. That's
Okay.
right. So if you want I equal to I plus 2, then it will print only the alternate numbers till this condition. Perfect.
Okay. So similarly goes with I plus.
Yeah, I plus any number. I plus
is
3, I plus 4, you can do any number. So I plus equal to 2, the same thing. Fine. So the same concept we are going to repeat with for loops, and the syntax is going to be slightly different because we are going to use a function called range. Okay, this function is going to give us the numbers within that follows within the range, right? So we will see how to write a for loop. So I'm going to say for I. So here the difference is, in while loop I had to initialize the variable upfront, which is not needed in for loop, and when in while loop I had to manually increment the value, which I don't have to do in for loop. That is the difference, right? So for I in range, so here if you look at this range, the range is a function. So as someone asked, you can use shift tab to see here. So when I use shift tab, you see that the range function takes one main argument, okay, but it can also take additional arguments like start, stop, and step. So we are going to see how this range function is going to work. Okay, so here you can see that I can give a start. So if I don't give a start, by default Python takes the value from 0 onwards. For example, I'm just printing for I in range 10 and print I. Okay, so this is going to print the numbers from 0 to 9 because I didn't give any starting point. So by default the starting point will be taken as 0, and from 0 till 9 it gets printed. So 10 times it is getting printed. Now the syntax that we want to use is, I want to mention that start the loop from 1 and then just make it as 11, because the syntax for range function is that it will always use the lower limit into account and ignore the upper limit from executing. So when you say 1 comma 11 only, it will print 1 to 10. Okay, if you print 1 to 10, you will get only 1 to 9 in the answer, because this number will not be taken into account at all. So you need to remember that alone. So whatever upper limit you are giving, that number will not be taken. Just the previous number, till the previous number only it will be taken. So for I in range 1 comma 11, you just say print I. This will print the values from 1 to 10. And here you made I equal to I plus 2. So likewise here you can give a third argument, comma, just specify 2. So if you want to increment in steps of 2, you give that. Okay. For I in range 1 comma 11 comma 2, I am saying print the values. So 1 3 5 7 9. So same way, you want to increment in steps of 3 or 4 and so on. So this is called as a step. By default the step is 1. So you don't have to mention that 1 at all, because even if you don't mention that, that is what is happening.